Mike looked up, surprise and then a smug satisfaction in his eyes. Sarah's face, usually so warm and welcoming, was now contorted with a mix of guilt and defiance. "What the hell is going on here?" I demanded, my voice steady but cold. Sarah sat up abruptly, her eyes darting between me and Mike. "Oh, look who decided to show up," she sneered, her tone dripping with contempt. "Must be nice to have the luxury of flying home on time." Mike straightened, trying to mask his nervousness with a facade of casualness. "We were just talking, man. No big deal." "No big deal?" I echoed, incredulous. "I'm supposed to be out there risking my life while you two—" Sarah cut me off, her eyes flashing. "Don't act like you're some hero. You're just a coward hiding behind your truck, thinking the road is more important than your own wife." Her words stung, each insult a deliberate attempt to wound. I took a step forward, my confidence unwavering. "I've been on the road because it's my job, not because I don't value our marriage. If you have a problem with that, maybe you should think about why you're even here." The room seemed to shrink around me, the air thick with unspoken accusations and raw tension. Sarah's sneer only fueled the fire inside me, but I maintained my composure. I wasn't here to lose my cool. I was here to uncover the truth and reclaim what was rightfully mine. "Cut the crap, Sarah," I said, my voice steady. "I know what you two are doing. There's no point in denying it." Sarah rolled her eyes, her frustration evident. "Oh, please, don't act like you have all the answers. Maybe I needed some excitement while you were off gallivanting with your precious truck." Mike shifted uncomfortably, avoiding my gaze. His usual bravado was gone, replaced by a palpable unease. I could see the guilt etched into his features, but Sarah was relentless. "You think this is exciting for me? You have no idea what it's like to be on the road for weeks, dealing with loneliness and exhaustion. Maybe I found someone who actually understands me." Her words were like daggers, each one piercing deeper into the facade I'd carefully built over the years. But I wasn't about to let her tear me down without a fight. I took a deep breath, centering myself. "You think betraying our vows is going to fill that void? You're both making a mistake, and I'm not going to let you get away with it." Sarah laughed bitterly, shaking her head. "You always did have a way of making things about you. Maybe if you spent less time on the road and more time at home, we wouldn't be in this mess." I clenched my fists, fighting the urge to retaliate verbally. Instead, I decided to let my actions speak louder than any words could. I turned and walked towards the window, my mind already racing with plans. "Maybe you're right," I said slowly. "Maybe I have been distant. But that doesn't give you the right to disrespect our marriage." As I gazed out the window, memories of our life together flashed before me, their first home, our wedding day, the laughter we shared. It all seemed so distant now, overshadowed by betrayal and deceit. Suddenly, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I glanced at the screen. A message from dispatch. Another unexpected delay had occurred, stranding me even longer. Frustration bubbled up, but I pushed it aside. There was no turning back now. Turning back to the room, I faced Sarah and Mike once more. "I'm done here. I need to leave." Before either of them could respond, I made my move. I grabbed my keys from the counter and strode towards the door, leaving them to stew in their own mess. As I stepped outside, the cool night air hit me, clearing my head and sharpening my resolve. Driving away from the house, I felt a mix of anger and determination. This wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. I had built a life on the road, and I wasn't about to let it crumble because of their selfish actions. Over the next few days, I meticulously planned my revenge. I knew both Sarah and Mike had their weaknesses, and I was ready to exploit them. First, I turned my attention to Mike. As a fellow trucker, he was part of the same network I navigated daily. Gathering information wouldn't be difficult. I started by contacting some of our mutual contacts, subtly inquiring about Mike's recent activities. It didn't take long to uncover that Mike had been skimming from the company's accounts, taking advantage of his position for personal gain. Armed with this knowledge, I approached the company's higher-ups, presenting my findings with undeniable evidence. The fallout was swift. Mike was suspended pending an investigation, his reputation tarnished beyond repair. But that was just the beginning. With Mike out of the picture, Sarah was left without her accomplice, and I saw an opportunity to strike at her as well. I knew Sarah prided herself on her social standing and her relationships within our community. Leveraging the information I had gathered about Mike, I began to weave a narrative that implicated Sarah in his deceit. Carefully, I shared snippets of our confrontation, painting her as the mastermind behind the betrayal. The impact was immediate. Friends and family who had once admired her began to distance themselves, questioning her integrity and judgment. The isolation she once exploited now became her prison, leaving her vulnerable and desperate. But the final act of my revenge was yet to come. I knew that true closure could only be achieved by severing all ties, ensuring that neither she nor Mike could ever hurt me again. I cut off all communication, blocking her number and removing her from every aspect of my life. It was painful, but necessary. The drive away from my house felt surreal, the familiar streets now blurred by the haze of betrayal. My mind was a whirlwind of emotions, anger, hurt, and an unyielding resolve to reclaim my life from the wreckage Sarah and Mike had created. The open road, once a symbol of freedom, now seemed like the perfect place to plot my next moves. Back at the truck stop, I found solace in the routine. The hum of diesel engines and the chatter of fellow truckers provided a comforting backdrop to my simmering thoughts. I pulled out my phone and began mapping out my plan. Revenge wasn't something I ever envisioned for myself, but the sting of their betrayal left me no choice. First, I needed to dismantle Mike's facade. He was more than just a colleague. He was a trusted friend within our tight-knit trucking community. Mike's charm had always been his strength, but it was also his Achilles heel. I started by reaching out to some of our mutual contacts, casually inquiring about Mike's recent activities. It didn't take long to uncover discrepancies in his accounts and a trail of suspicious transactions that pointed directly to him embezzling funds from our company. Armed with this evidence, I scheduled a meeting with the company's higher-ups. I presented my findings with meticulous detail, ensuring there was no room for doubt. The reaction was immediate and severe. Mike was suspended pending a full investigation, his reputation shattered in an instant. The news spread quickly through our network, and whispers of his deceit tarnished his image beyond repair. Watching him lose everything he'd built was a small, satisfying piece of the revenge puzzle. With Mike out of the picture, Sarah was left vulnerable. Without her partner in crime, she had no one to lean on. I knew she thrived on her social standing and the admiration of those around her. By dismantling Mike's position, I could isolate her further, ensuring she had nowhere to turn. I began by subtly spreading rumors about Sarah's involvement in Mike's schemes. At first, it was just hushed conversations at truck stops and casual mentions in online forums. Slowly, the narrative took shape, painting Sarah as not just a victim but a willing accomplice. Her once strong relationships began to crumble as friends and acquaintances started to question her integrity. But Sarah was resilient, her pride refusing to let her fall without a fight. She confronted me at a subsequent meetup, her demeanor colder than before. "You think you've won, don't you?" she spat, eyes flashing with a mix of anger and desperation. Destroying Mike wasn't enough. "What else are you going to do?" I met her gaze steadily, unflinching. "I'm doing what's necessary to protect myself and our reputation. You left me no choice." Her facade cracked for a brief moment, revealing the fear and uncertainty beneath. But she quickly regained her composure, pushing me away with a sneer. "You're pathetic. I see now why you spent so much time on the road. You're just running away from everything." Her words, intended to wound, only strengthened my resolve. I had anticipated her attempts to belittle me, to make me feel inadequate for staying committed to our marriage despite the distance. But this time, there was no room for her manipulation. As days turned into weeks, the consequences of my actions became more pronounced. Mike's downfall was complete, and Sarah's social circle shrank as her reputation took a hit. The once vibrant and confident woman I knew was now a shadow of herself, struggling to maintain any semblance of her former life. Yet, the final piece of the revenge puzzle remained. I needed to ensure that neither Sarah nor Mike could ever hurt me again. It wasn't just about destroying them. It was about reclaiming my own sense of worth and moving forward without their toxic influence. I delved deeper into both their lives, uncovering secrets and vulnerabilities that could be used to sever all ties permanently. For Mike, it was about leveraging his financial crimes to ensure he couldn't easily find new employment within the industry. I shared detailed reports with industry regulators, making sure his black mark was indelible. For Sarah, it was about isolating her emotionally and socially. I contacted mutual friends and acquaintances, sharing my side of the story with transparency and honesty. I attended community events and gatherings, making it clear where my loyalties truly lay. Slowly but surely, the support I once took for granted began to return, reinforcing my confidence and reminding me of my own worth. Back at the truck stop, the routine offered a semblance of normalcy. The familiar sights and sounds provided a backdrop against which I could strategize. I began to observe Sarah and Mike more closely, piecing together the puzzle of their relationship. It became evident that their affair was not a fleeting moment of weakness but a calculated move, meticulously planned and executed. Sarah, who had always been the epitome of grace and composure, now wore a mask of arrogance and defiance. Every interaction with her was laced with venom, her words sharp and cutting. She spun elaborate lies, painting herself as the wronged party, victimizing herself to garner sympathy and support. Her behavior was a stark contrast to the loving partner I had known, revealing a side of her I had never witnessed before. Mike, on the other hand, reveled in the chaos he had orchestrated. His charm, once a tool for camaraderie among truckers, had transformed into a weapon of manipulation. He thrived on the attention and power he wielded over both Sarah and our mutual acquaintances. It was clear that his involvement with Sarah was more than just an affair. It was a means to an end, a way to secure his position and influence within our tight-knit community. As I delved deeper, I uncovered subtle hints of their ongoing relationship. Late-night phone calls, secret rendezvous, and financial irregularities all pointed to a web of lies they had spun to conceal their true intentions. Each discovery fueled my resolve, igniting a fire within me to reclaim my life from their deceit. One evening, as I sat in the dimly lit corner of the truck stop's diner, I overheard a conversation that confirmed my suspicions. Sarah and Mike were discussing their future plans, their voices hushed yet filled with excitement. They spoke of expanding their influence, leveraging their connection to manipulate company decisions, and ensuring that no one would dare question their authority. The gravity of their ambitions sent a chill down my spine. This was no longer just about infidelity. It was about power, control, and the lengths they were willing to go to maintain their grip on both our personal and professional lives. I realized that to dismantle their empire, I needed to be meticulous, strategic, and, above all, unrelenting. Returning to my truck, I began to map out my plan of action. Revenge, I decided, would not be impulsive or driven by raw emotion. It would be calculated, leveraging their weaknesses and exposing their vulnerabilities. I reached out to trusted contacts within the trucking community, discreetly gathering information and building alliances. It was time to turn the tables, to use their own game against them. The first step was to gather undeniable evidence of Mike's misconduct. I knew he had been skimming funds from our company's accounts, but I needed concrete proof to ensure his downfall. Utilizing my access to company records and discreetly monitoring his transactions, I compiled a dossier of his financial misdeeds. Every fraudulent entry, every unauthorized withdrawal, was meticulously documented, creating an airtight case against him. With the evidence in hand, I approached the company's higher-ups, presenting my findings with unwavering confidence. The response was swift and decisive. Mike was immediately suspended pending a thorough investigation, his reputation tarnished beyond repair. The news spread like wildfire through our network, and whispers of his deceit echoed in every corner of our professional sphere. Watching him lose everything he had worked for was a small but satisfying victory in my quest for justice. But this was just the beginning. Sarah, now devoid of her partner in crime, was left to navigate the fallout alone. I knew she thrived on her social standing and the admiration of those around her. Without Mike's support, her influence would wane, leaving her vulnerable and exposed. I began to subtly spread rumors about Sarah's involvement in Mike's schemes, ensuring that the narrative painted her not just as a victim but as a willing accomplice. Her reaction was predictable yet infuriating. Sarah continued to deny any wrongdoing, her facade of innocence unbroken. She confronted me at various truck stops and community events, her demeanor a mix of anger and desperation. "You think you've won something here?" she spat during one such encounter. "This isn't over." Her relentless denial only fueled my determination. I documented every interaction, every lie she told, and began to share these accounts with our mutual contacts. The more I exposed her deceit, the more her social circles through discreet inquiries and careful observation. I learned that Sarah and Mike had been planning to expand their influence beyond our company. They had set their sights on other ventures, using their deceit as a means to climb the corporate ladder and secure positions of power in larger networks. This revelation was a game-changer. It wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about preventing them from wreaking havoc on a broader scale. I realized that stopping them required more than just exposing their lies. It necessitated dismantling their entire operation. I intensified my efforts, leveraging every resource at my disposal. I collaborated with industry regulators, sharing the evidence I had gathered and highlighting the potential risks Sarah and Mike posed to the integrity of our field. The response was overwhelming, with authorities launching formal investigations into their activities. Their once unassailable positions were now under scrutiny, and the walls were closing in on them from all sides. But even as their empire began to crumble, Sarah refused to back down. Her lies became more elaborate, her tactics more aggressive. She attempted to discredit me, spreading false narratives to shift the blame and salvage her reputation. But by now, the evidence was undeniable, and her attempts at deflection fell on deaf ears. The truth had a way of surfacing, no matter how deeply it was buried. As I watched Sarah and Mike's worlds implode, I felt a sense of closure beginning to take root. Their lies and deceit had not only destroyed their lives, but had also fortified my own resolve and sense of self-worth. The open road, once a symbol of my freedom and solitude, now represented the endless possibilities that awaited me beyond the shadows of betrayal. The weeks that followed my calculated dismantling of Mike's reputation and Sarah's social standing should have marked the end of this tumultuous chapter. Instead, they revealed deeper layers of deceit that I had yet to uncover. Just when I thought I had severed all ties, the truth began to resurface, proving that Sarah and Mike were more entwined than I had ever imagined. It started with subtle hints. I received anonymous messages hinting that Sarah and Mike were still meeting behind my back. At first, I dismissed them as baseless rumors, remnants of the chaos I had already navigated. But as the messages persisted, detailing specific dates and locations, doubt began to creep in. My confidence, once unwavering, now wavered under the weight of uncertainty. Determined to get to the bottom of this, I decided to confront the situation head-on. I returned to the local diner where I had first overheard their conversation. The familiar setting provided a sense of nostalgia, but my purpose was far from pleasant. As I settled into my usual booth, I kept my eyes peeled for any sign of Sarah or Mike. Hours passed with nothing out of the ordinary, and I began to feel foolish for letting paranoia take hold. Just as I was about to call it a night, my phone buzzed with a new message. "Meet me at the old warehouse on 5th, midnight." It's important. The sender was unknown, but the timing and location seemed too specific to ignore. Midnight found me standing outside the decrepit warehouse, the moon casting long shadows across the cracked pavement. The air was thick with tension as I approached the entrance, my heart pounding in my chest. Inside, the space was dimly lit, the remnants of past activities scattered around. It was here that Sarah and Mike had chosen to continue their clandestine meetings, away from prying eyes. As I stepped further into the warehouse, I saw them, Sarah and Mike, engaged in a heated conversation. Their bodies were close, their interactions filled with the same deceitful energy that had first betrayed me. But this time, there was something different in their demeanor, a sense of urgency that I hadn't anticipated. "Why are you doing this?" I demanded, my voice echoing through the vast space. "After everything we've been through." Sarah looked up, her expression a mix of defiance and desperation. "You think you've won, don't you? Just because you exposed Mike's fraud, you think that's the end of us?" Mike stepped forward, his eyes cold. You're trying to ruin our lives, and for what? So you can feel superior? You've lost everything, and now you want to drag us down with you. Her facade began to crumble, the lies slipping away to reveal the vulnerability beneath. We're just trying to survive, she whispered, a stark contrast to her usual arrogant tone. You don't understand what it's like to be left alone, to have no one but Mike. Their attempts to justify their actions only fueled my determination. They had thought that by eliminating Mike, they could control the narrative and continue their affair unchecked. But their continued deceit proved otherwise. They were still entwined, still manipulating each other to maintain their grip on what they thought they deserved. I realized that their bond was more about mutual convenience and shared deceit than genuine affection. This revelation was the final piece I needed to proceed with my next move. It wasn't enough to expose their lies. I needed to ensure that their relationship was completely dismantled, leaving no room for reconciliation or further betrayal. Over the following days, I intensified my efforts. I leveraged every connection within the trucking community, sharing the latest revelations about Sarah and Mike's ongoing affair. I documented their meetings, captured photos of their rendezvous, and compiled testimonies from those who had witnessed their continued deceit. Each piece of evidence was meticulously organized, building an irrefutable case against them both. Simultaneously, I reached out to local authorities, presenting my findings with the intention of pushing their lives into a spiral they couldn't escape. The impact was immediate. Legal actions were initiated, further tarnishing their already damaged reputations. Their attempts to continue their affair were now overshadowed by the legal and social repercussions of their actions. But the most satisfying twist came when I discovered that Sarah had been manipulating Mike's financial troubles to keep him dependent on her. She had orchestrated a series of investments that were bound to fail, ensuring that Mike remained trapped in a cycle of debt and desperation. This control gave her the upper hand, making Mike an unwilling accomplice in her continued deceit. Armed with this knowledge, I approached Sarah one final time. We met at the same warehouse where everything had come to a head. The atmosphere was tense, the air thick with unspoken words and lingering resentment. I know everything, I stated plainly, meeting her gaze with unwavering confidence. Your manipulation of Mike's finances, your continued lies. It all ends now. Sarah's facade finally shattered, her eyes filling with a mixture of fear and realization. You think you can just walk in here and end it? This isn't over. I took a step closer, my resolve unshaken. It is over. You and Mike have destroyed each other, and now it's time for you to face the consequences of your actions. No more lies, no more deceit. In that moment, the power dynamic shifted. Sarah, who had once wielded control through manipulation and falsehoods, found herself cornered and exposed. Mike, stripped of his financial independence, could no longer stand by her side. Their alliance had crumbled under the weight of truth and retribution. As the authorities arrived to take them into custody, I felt a sense of closure wash over me. The road to revenge had been long and arduous, but it had ultimately led to the dismantling of their toxic relationship and the restoration of my own sense of self-worth.